Hey YouTube, this is a video that's about mountain bike suspensions and their designs and differences and benefits of each. I always seem to get this, the suspension is my biggest thing about why you'd buy a mountain bike. The rear suspension in particular. The front is changeable, but the rear you cannot change. This part in here and in here, you can't change all this out with a different manufacturer. It comes with the bike. Like, you can't just take the rear suspension out of something else and put it on this bike without some major fabrication. And I hear people say, "Oh, you can change them out. You can change out the shock all you want." Well, yeah, you absolutely can. This part right here, right there, that's the shock. That is just providing the support and the shock absorption. Okay, that you can change. You can put anything you want there, so long as it fits. Right. This back, after you get past the shock, you cannot change all this. Okay, that you cannot change. And so, why is it important? Why does it? Why are we talking about this? Well, this has what's called a Maestro suspension, and it's very similar to the DW Link. So similar that there was a legal fight over it. But it uses similar principles, and it has a similar effect. And the effect is you get a bike that that just has a single pivot and doesn't have any of this special stuff in here. Okay. And I know it's kind of hard to tell what I'm talking about, but you get a basic single pivot suspension, and what you can get is brake jack, which is when you hit the brakes and your suspension just completely locks up, right? Your tire goes down, you lose suspension. So when you lose suspension, you lose traction. You lose traction when you're trying to brake, no bueno. Okay, so that's one aspect. The other aspect is pedal bob. Okay, the way they, on a regular bike, you can see it on a bike you get from a box store, a nice heavy one that you can get for about $200. You ride one of those, and as you pedal, you'll notice, you're just bobbing along. It's called pedal bob or pedal feedback, and that's no bueno either. That kills your efficiency. So, I had one of those way back in the day, and before I realized what real mountain bikes were all about, and probably before they had this design, and I couldn't ride very far on it at all. It just sapped all my energy. So it's a big talking point for people who are all about hardtails, right? That's their argument for why hardtails are so much better. Well, with a properly set up suspension, a dual pivot suspension, it almost rides. It doesn't ride with the same efficiency as a hardtail. A hardtail's a hardtail, right? But it gets pretty close. And, I had a guy say, "Oh, well, all the major bike manufacturers are the same. Just because, Giant did this doesn't mean they're the be-all, end-all." And that wasn't my argument. My argument for why Giant was a good option is because their bikes are less expensive typically, and yet you still get the really good, dual pivot suspension. So, and my point in the video is that there are other bike makers that have this same type of benefit on their rear suspension, and they're not all based on the dual pivot design. A lot of them are very similar. I mentioned Niner in the past. I've mentioned, Iron Horse and Pivot and all those. Shoot, I don't even know who's in business still, but they all have similar technologies. As I understand it, Santa Cruz has a variable pivot point. All these things that are built into Counter-Rock pedal bob are very, very nice. And where it makes the difference is when you're riding along and you're in hilly areas. You see the little switch right there, that's Pro Pedal, and you can lock it out or you can leave it fully open. And when it's fully open, your suspension does its job. It soaks up the bumps, it provides, it's just ideal. When you lock that out, it's kind of putting a limiter on your movement. So when you have a suspension system where all of your pedal bob and stuff like that is all handled here, that's not real good. Anytime you've got the shock doing the work of counteracting pedal bob, it's not ideal. And that's because it firms up the ride too much when you're climbing or something like that. Or some systems incorporate it into the shock further and have hydraulics to where it hits a bump and firms it up, and it's a real stable platform and it works quite well, but it is a firmer ride, and it's not for everybody. So ideally you want something that is designed in the suspension itself. Okay, now am I saying Giant's the only one? No, that is not what I'm saying. Am I saying they are the best in the world? No, that is not what I'm saying. Some people feel that way, and for me, it's not about the brand. It's about the design of the rear suspension that makes the difference. For example, Yeti makes the Switch, and I've ridden it, and it is a very, very nice system. It has this little pivot thing that is kind of oblong in its arc, and it works in a similar fashion. Okay, it's not a rip off of any particular maker. It's a design that is a unique way of handling the problem. And what's the big deal about flipping the switch? It's a hassle. It's, for me, I don't like climbing and getting to the top of the hill and being all excited about a descent and going down and just having a rough descent and then realizing, oh crap, I left the pro pedal on. You know what I mean? You left the lockout on. It's not the end of the world, but when you can just change your direction of what bikes you're looking at and how you're looking at the rear suspension, you don't have to deal with that. I mean, one of the reasons I like Giant is because they're very economical. They're the largest bike manufacturer in the world, as far as I know. And to give you an example, why I talked about Giant and why I had good things to say about them. This is a Trance 275, 2015, and this bike is a phenomenal value for the money. I mean, show me another bike where you can get Fox suspension, a good, a well-designed rear suspension that counteracts pedal bob and counteracts brake jack, all within the suspension itself, not within the shock. Okay, show me where you can get all that, Shimano components, and a lifetime warranty for $2,500. Okay, that's outstanding. That's typically, a lot of other manufacturers, you're going to be looking at $3,500. So it's pretty good. I've got this bike on demo, so I'm just making videos like mad on it because I really like it. It's a good bike. But I am not saying that Giant is the only one. I'm not saying that every other bike other than Giant is a waste of money. I'm not saying that. And so I just want to clear that up. I don't think that Giant's the only brand to get. I don't. I think it's a great brand. I think they've done their homework. They pay attention to what their riders want. They pay attention to what works. And they're good. But for me, it's not about buy Giant. I mean, sure, look at them. They should be in your consideration. Absolutely. If you're looking at a mountain bike, I think they're great. What I am saying is that carefully look at the suspension system. Look at. I want something that it's all just in this system back here and it's all well thought out. So, whatever works. Just look carefully at the suspension. Be real diligent because again, Giant makes a split pivot, the stance. Okay, is that a bike that I would recommend based on what I've been talking about the entire time I've been talking about bikes? No, it's not a bike I'd recommend. Is it inexpensive? Yeah, it's a good deal. If you want to get in and you want all the components, but you don't want to pay for having the rear suspension, hey, it's your prerogative, man. Do it. For me, I'm not going to spend money on a mountain bike and not have a great rear suspension, because again, that is the part you cannot change out. It's brand specific. You can't put a Yeti switch on a Giant without a freaking welder, and a lot of mechanical knowledge and engineering knowledge. Okay, if you want the Yeti switch, just get the Yeti switch. And that's a new technology for them. It's only been out a couple years. So before that, the bikes they used to have are not something I would have bought, knowing what I know now about the suspension. They were just, they were good. They worked. I mean, they're great for descending and stuff, but for climbing, it was the same deal. And hey, I could be wrong about that. Maybe they've had a great system all along, but from what I've seen, it was, the old single pivot style. Single pivots, as far as they're concerned, they're not horrible. I mean, they do ride nicely. I mean, they just, the efficiency isn't as good on climbing and stuff like that, and the ease of use. I don't like thinking about my rear suspension when I'm riding. I just want to ride. I just want to, go and do my thing. I don't flip switches on my fork. I don't flip switches on my shock. I just do it. You know what I mean? And that's what makes it a little more fun. And when you get something that has a good rear suspension, you're not, thinking about, when I get some money, I want to get a better bike and stuff like that. You've got a good bike to start with. You know what I mean? That's kind of the goal here. It's one of the reasons I did my thing on how to buy a mountain bike was, I see a lot of people spend a lot of money searching for the right bike, and it's a brain breaker. I've met a lot of people who are just trying to get into the sport, and when they're buying their first bike, it's freaking agonizing because you don't want to make the wrong decision. It's you can't return these. It's not like you go out and you ride it for 15 days and you take it back. I'm not satisfied. It's not the way it works in mountain bikes. In mountain bikes, all sales are final. So be forewarned. But again, beating a dead horse here. Your rear suspension, when you're buying a full suspension mountain bike, is that's really what you need to be concerned with. Of course, other things come into play, like standover and geometry and effective top tube length and all that stuff. I mean, it gets mind-numbing. It really does. But if you build, this is the core of your full suspension bike right there. That's everything. So if you don't buy with that in mind, then what are you building all the rest for? You know what I mean? And no, it's not the end of the world. Like I said, there are a lot of people that ride single pivots and they're happy with them. It suits their riding style, whatever. I'm not saying, all you guys have crap bikes. Come on now. What I'm trying to say is, when you're looking at bikes and you're looking at something that you want to get, your rear suspension on a full suspension bike should be your main focus, because that's everything. That's why you're buying a full suspension bike, is to have that rear suspension. So it just varies for each manufacturer. So, there are a lot of great bike makers out there, fantastic ones. And so I'm not here to bash any of them. What I'm trying to do is the people that watch my videos, they watch them to pick up that little nugget of information that helps them make decisions. And I do, I'm kind of neurotic. I've got Asperger's. I research things, and I look into them very carefully. And so I'm just giving people that advantage without having to, obsess over it like I do. It's the benefit of having Asperger's. But anyway, thanks guys for watching. Feel free to comment, and I appreciate the comments. This video is an excellent example. I make videos a lot of times based on comments I get. People ask me about certain technologies and certain brands and things like that. I'm happy if I can answer questions. I'll answer them. If I can provide some sort of insight, I absolutely will. I do this because you guys are watching and you guys are getting me more views. So I appreciate it. And again, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.